Om Namo Narayana, Om Namah Shivaya, Shiva Om, Shiva Hum, Om. Welcome to what I hope will be my last first satsang from the Yogi Cave with your host Chuck the Yogi. And what I mean by that is that I've been working on this so far for like 10 months, working out all the kinks. And the latest kink that I had was an audio kink, so I went ahead and I got a small microphone attached here to the shirt. Hopefully that is going to be the last kink that I have, and I'll be able to get things going. I figured it was going to take me about a year to figure all the kinks out, audio, video, all that other stuff. So I'm hoping that I'll have a product from this point onward that is acceptable. Not necessarily super professional or anything like that, but just acceptable. So, any mistakes on my part, please forgive me. But you see where I'm coming from. So let me talk a little bit about myself, what brings me here, what am I doing here, what is a satsang? Satsang is a gathering. Why American Yogi Satsang? Because I'm an American, I'm a Westerner, and I wanted to be able to impart yogic wisdom or oriental wisdom in a way that any Westerner or anybody that is educated in the Western way can easily absorb. So that's the purpose of what I'm doing. And why am I doing it? What kind of authority do I have? Well, I've been studying these things since the mid-'80s, and I'm about to hit my 50th birthday. This is mid-July right now, 2020. So I think by this time I have something to say about these things, and I've also been under various masters of different traditions over the years. So I'm not pulling anything out of my ass or anything like that. I'm just going to go ahead and get right to it, and hopefully you'll enjoy what has to be offered here. I'll try to do it short and sweet. I'll try to do it in installments of 10 to 15 minutes at the most, because I figured nowadays it's just about all people can take, and I wanted to start with the Yoga Sutra and a little history of the Yoga Sutra. Yoga Sutra was written, or rather created, because there was nothing in written form until about 1,000 years ago, but it was created by Patanjali, who's a sage and a genius, sometime between the 2nd century BC and the 2nd century AD, and it fits on a single piece of paper. But it takes me, if I do this once a week, about half a year to explore. And I already had a couple of guinea pigs where average Americans, and I would do it in this format every other week, and it took me about a year. So I'm assuming that this will take me about half a year, and 3 months to half a year, and that's just the beginning. We'll see where things go. I'll be sure to be open to your suggestions and all that, but let's get started, shall we? So why the Yoga Sutra? The Yoga Sutra is what I would call a foundational text of yoga, and sutra comes from, is cognate with the word suture, so it kind of implies something very precise. And ancient languages like the Judaic language, Greek language, and the Indian language are really good at packaging information, and there's a lot of information to be unpacked with the Yoga Sutra. So giving you that foundational text, which I started to read also back in the mid-'80s, is kind of like a good start, I think, to this gathering, to this satsang. So bear with me, and let's get started. So I'm based on this fellow right here, George Feuerstein, which I consider one of the recently passed away. I consider one of the foremost interpreters of the Eastern tradition into a Western format. So I'm going off by his work, at least in this one. So I'm going to start with chapter 1, which is Samadhipada, and forgive any mistakes I made in reciting the Sanskrit language. I'm not a Sanskritist or anything like that, just a yogi. Alright, so 1.1, Hatha Yoga Anushasana. Now commences the exposition of yoga. So it's just a nice little way to introduce. Now this is the Yoga Sutra and other things like the Vedas and so on were recited. They were memorized and then they were recited in the form of a song. So I would recommend if any of you could find anything like that on the internet, just to be able to listen to it. If I can find a link, I'll place it below. But it just kind of gives you an idea because in the musical format, it's easier to remember vast amounts of information. So just giving you the context here. This is very dry and academic in comparison to that. But this is the knowledge that we have now in the Kali Yuga. It's all written in books and so on. Although we understand that this is just the surface knowledge and that there's all these different layers that are unspoken and certainly unwritten. But we won't get into all that. Anyway, so 1.2. Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So I consider this probably the most important sutra in the entire Yoga Sutra. Why? It states that yoga is a restriction of fluctuations of consciousness. So why do yoga, well, first of all, let's get into the definition of yoga, right? And I'll probably leave it here because that's a mouthful right there. It doesn't seem like much, but there's all kinds of layers to that. First of all, yoga is cognate with the word yoke, to yoke. So what are you yoking yourself to? You're yoking yourself to something higher than yourself. And one of the preambles to be able to do that is to be able to level out the fluctuations of consciousness, almost as if calming the sea of your mind, so that you can see, so to speak, almost as an oracle, what's showing up beneath the surface. So that's, I would say, the main purpose of yoga. It's a kind of like a preamble to yoga, to that union. Because if your monkey mind is just jumping all over the place, then how can you even get started? So one thing we will get into is that yoga, with a capital Y, is a vast, several thousand year tradition. And most of what we've gotten is, in the West, is in the form of yoga studios and so on. Nothing wrong with that. But again, surface level. So we'll be going a little bit into those deeper levels as we go along. We won't be able to get into all of it, for sure. We'll hit 1, 2, maybe up to 3 layers down. But just to give you an idea of what we're dealing here with, and I've been reading this since the mid-'80s, like I've said, and I always derive new knowledge from it. It's just one of those rare, precious jewels that just keeps on giving. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here. We got a long way to go, so there's no rush, no hurry. In the Sanatana Dharma, or the eternal natural way of things. So we're just going to mosey on down and enjoy the flowers on the path. Om Namo Narayana, Om Namah Shivaya, Shivom, Shivam, Om, Jai Ma. Till next time.